everyone. Happy Wednesday. I hope everyone is having a super fantastic week so far. Welcome to Women, Wealth, and Probably Wine. Today we're going to be talking to you guys about vulnerability and how to be your most authentic self. And we have a very special guest. I couldn't think of a better qualified guest to talk about anything in this realm outside of Erin Szcerba. I had the immense pleasure of meeting Erin several months ago, and I was instantly drawn to her because A, she's a lot of fun, and B, she's seriously one of the most authentic people that I know, and that becomes apparent very rapidly once you meet her. When I got to know her a little bit better, I started to realize that she was coming across that way on purpose because she had clearly done the work to become this very authentic person and the ray of sunshine that she is. So without further ado, I'm going to let Erin introduce herself, tell us a little bit more about who she is, her business, and kind of what makes her tick.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. That was so nice. So yes, I'm Erin Szczerba, and I'm a real estate agent in Georgetown, Texas. I actually started selling real estate in 2002 in Denver, Colorado. And if you don't know, if you're too young to know, the housing market crashed in 2008. And at the same time, I was getting a divorce, and I instantly became a full-time single mom. And so I got out of real estate at that time. It was very stressful, and I didn't need any more stress in my life. So I started a couple of small businesses. I sold them. And then in 2014, I got into corporate marketing at Dell. And I did that for 8 years. And then a couple of years ago, I decided to get back into real estate. And so I left corporate America, got into entrepreneurship again. I'm back where I belong. I've always loved homes. I've been in love with homes since I was like 12 years old. So this is great for me. I also feel like, in the spirit of what we're talking about today, I can really be my true authentic self in this industry. I'm not trying to be, a spokesperson for Dell. I'm just a spokesperson for me. And so that's pretty easy. Yeah, and I'm a mom. My son now is 20 years old. He's in college, so I'm getting used to, not cooking all the time for him, not, going to his track meets and his cross country meets and figuring out, what do I want to do, which is really fun.
Like go to Italy in a few weeks. How exciting.
Yeah, we'll go to Italy, get married, and that.
Awesome. I love it. Well, we're very, very excited to have you. Before we get into it, which I'm so excited to do, we have some really amazing questions to go through with Erin today that Michelle and I are going to walk through. But obviously, we have to talk about the most important thing, which is the wine. Today, we are doing a rosé. So I'm going to try my best to show this bottle. I posted this in the chat on LinkedIn. We're going to do that every week so that you guys have access to what we're drinking if you want to drink alongside of us, or obviously it's Wine Wednesday, so you can drink whatever you want to. It's completely up to you, or you don't have to, but it's just kind of a fun thing for us to, do while we're chatting with one another. But this is a rosé. And when it comes to rosé, there's a really rich history with regard to rosé as a beverage. It got a really, really bad rap for a while because it was kind of coming off of the heels of White Zinfandel in the late 80s, which was, if any of you guys have had the opportunity to drink, absolute trash. So what they did, kind of specific to the Provençal style rosé, which is the very, very light pale pink rosés that you guys will see around, not the richer colors. Those are going to be more akin to like an Italian rosé or the Rhone. They have this whole think pink, and then they did this like massive marketing campaign for men to drink rosé. And I think it was like real men drink pink. But it's a really rich history to see kind of how it's gotten to where it is now. Obviously, I'm obsessed with wine. When it comes to rosé, I'm not really big on Provençal style rosés because I find them to be not as complex as some of the other rosés that you might find. However, there is nothing better than a true tried and true rosé, like when it's really, really hot, like it is right now in Texas. It's the perfect wine, to be on the patio with. And then obviously rosé, there's a huge myriad of grapes that can be leveraged. This one is a blend of Grenache, Cinsault, Mourvèdre, and Syrah. So because it is a blend of so many different grapes, it's a lot more complex than your typical Provençal style rosé. And then, as is customary with this winemaker, there is a little bit of salinity and sea spray. And they've been around for quite some time, but now they're striving for natural winemaking practices. So it's definitely really clean. It's not natty at all. If you're worried about that, I know that sometimes natural wines can get that rap. But truly a beautiful rosé that we're drinking this afternoon. And also, if you guys want to impress somebody at a party or talk to your parents about this moving forward, and they ask you about wine pairings, one of the biggest cheat codes is to use a rosé for pairing, because it is the easiest varietal of wine to pair with any style of food if you're unsure as to what the best pairing is going to be. And maybe we'll go into pairings a little bit later, but super fun. If you're going to like a barbecue or you're going somewhere and you don't know what the food's going to be, grab a bottle of rosé, because you're likely going to be safe with that assumption. And this one is one of my favorite importers, Kermit Lynch. This has become my new cheat sheet when I go to the grocery store. If you're unsure about a specific winemaker and you want to try something new and you don't want to waste your money on something that you're like, I'm not sure if this is very good, start to pay attention to who the importers are, because likely if you love something, if you love a bottle by that specific importer, other bottles by that importer are also going to be good. So Kermit Lynch is one of my favorite importers, and it's a very rare occurrence that I've had something by them that I didn't like. So just a pro tip when you guys are shopping for wine, because I know it can be hard to get out of your comfort zone from time to time. Okay, so we're going to get into our rose and thorn from last week. I just got back from vacation personally, so I feel like it's been longer than a week, but it really only has been a week. Michelle, why don't you kind of launch in and tell us about your rose and thorn from last week?
Sure. So my rose of last week, well, it was a long weekend, so got to enjoy, I guess, the first like really nice day to lay out at the pool. And then also Miami Heat is going to the NBA Finals, so really fun games. I don't know if anybody caught them last week.
I saw that. I meant to mention that to you.
Well, but some of the games I did, my heart like was palpitating, and I think it was game 6. My boyfriend and I were watching, and I was just like so stressed. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't handle this." But yay for Miami Heat! First game is tomorrow night, and my thorn of the week, I think it was actually something kind of weird to experience, but I feel like it was very challenging to have a long weekend. And I like kept wanting to work, and kind of like our topic last week where I was like, no, Michelle, you know what? You have to take the weekend off. Don't work. And it was very challenging for me, because I feel like this is actually like one of the first weekends that I actually took off and didn't work at all. So it was very challenging, but I was well rested and ready to come back yesterday.
Okay, I love that was your thorn, because that's hilarious. It kind of like segues almost perfectly into what my thorn was, because I was thinking, and that's why it's so smart to like think about things and be intentional about things, because I was thinking about our topic last week as well, where we were talking about creating boundaries and work-life balance. And my rose of last week was I had the opportunity to go to Cancun for 4 days, and spoiler alert, hold the phone, you guys. I actually, for the first time in my career, went on a vacation and did not bring my work laptop.
Wow.
So that was like from our talk. I told you I was going to do it. I did bring an iPad with me in case of an emergency, but luckily nothing came up that was urgent. It's only 3 days. And I was able to leave everything in a good enough place where I could actually unplug and enjoy the vacation. Obviously the day coming back is always stressful because you're catching up, but it's so important to have that time. And I stayed at a new resort. We opted for the ocean view room. So our bedroom had floor to ceiling windows, and we would wake up and it kind of felt like we were in the ocean, which was so peaceful and so necessary. My thorn of the week, which is in keeping with pretty much every time I travel these days, and I'm just like really hoping that this doesn't continue to happen. We got delayed on our plane yesterday due to weather, and we landed and then had to sit on the tarmac for like 2 hours because there was lightning within a 5-mile distance. and all the planes were like waiting to get into their proper gates. And then the pilot was so funny. He kept getting on the intercom and being like, I'm really sorry, I don't have much to tell you, but I will tell you that there's a 5-minute rule every time it lightnings, and we have to delay 5 minutes and it keeps lightning. So
oh no.
I was grateful that we were home, but I was like, man, every time it's always something when it's coming back on any sort of flight.
Oh no, that stinks. But your vacation looked very fun. I was stalking you on Instagram and the pictures look beautiful.
Highly recommend, especially if you're in Texas, hop down to Cancun. It's the direct flight's like an hour and 45 minutes. And everybody, like, there's so many. I mean, I usually like to go on like an adventure-ridden vacation, but this one was like a chill one. And there's so many amazing resorts you can stay at. Well, they'll cater to you hand and foot. So much fun. Highly recommend. Erin, do you want to share with us a little bit about your rose and thorn?
Okay, sure. So thanks for going first. It gave me some time to think about it. I think that last week, so I had several roses last week, but I'm going to have to go with, I had a kind of a double whammy in that on Thursday last week, I closed my biggest deal ever.
Ooh, yay, awesome.
It was one of my best friends from high school in Kansas. She moved here 7 years ago, and I got a call from her in April that she urgently needed to sell her house. And so that was really fun. She was going through some steps. So I was like able to be, a support to her. And just thinking, like, we pulled up some pictures from, so that would have been like 1992.
I love it.
So that's really fun, when you get to have, like, I was like, yay, win for me. But then also, this is so cool because it's with somebody I've known for so long.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
Thanks. And then my thorn, yeah, I guess I'm going to have to go with scratching my cornea. The other night, it was last night. Oh, actually, yeah. So it's making more sense now. I had one margarita at dinner at El Monumento, this place in Georgetown that's super good. And their margaritas are killer. And I got home and I was like, I got to go to bed. And I did wash my face, but I forgot to take my contacts out. So trying to pinch it out. Scratch cornea.
Erin and I are here to be your public service announcement to remind you to take your contacts out, because both of us have had that happen. Like, I didn't scratch my cornea. I was a little more fortunate. I'm sorry, Erin. Yeah. But definitely take your contacts out, because mine got stuck in my eye this morning, which is why I'm wearing glasses. So
yeah, it's the glasses, which, always create a little bit of a glare. They're not too bad today. So anyway.
Yeah, it's all fine. We're fine. We're going to take our contacts out from now on. And now I want to go to, what is it, El Monumento?
El Monumento. Yeah.
Okay. I've never been there before, but I've been. So Erin lives out in Georgetown, which for those of you who are in town, I live south. So in theory, it's not that far, but when you're dealing with 35, it does take some time. So I've explored a little bit about Georgetown, and it looks so cute. So Erin's going to be my personal tour guide and tell me all the places to go.
Yeah, we'll have to do a Georgetown day.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, let's get into the questions. Michelle, you want to kick us off?
Yes. Okay. Yes, sure. So Erin, can you tell us a little bit about what vulnerability means to you and why is it important?
Yes. So vulnerability to me just means putting yourself in a position where you could be rejected. It doesn't sound very glamorous, but that's really what it is. You're vulnerable to something. So you could be vulnerable to being rejected, or you could be vulnerable to being seen as imperfect or exposed as imperfect, since we all are actually imperfect. And I think it's important for so many reasons, but I think that what I have experienced is that being vulnerable, actually being willing to show parts of yourself that maybe you think are unlovely or unlovable, actually opens us up to greater connection with the people that we want to be well connected to. So So, it's really hard to actually connect with someone when you just have your filters on. We don't actually connect with people about what's always going perfectly in our lives. We actually connect over what is difficult and what pains us and what even maybe embarrasses us.
Yeah. It's funny. Definitely. It's funny that you mentioned that too, Erin, because as someone who has seen you walk that out time and time again through every single interaction I've ever had with you, I feel like so much of what you said in terms of putting yourself out there, not only has it become a little bit less taboo to talk about it now, more people are engaged in the conversation, but also it's been interesting for me to watch the transition of people's social presences. Because I think initially when social media started to blow up, everybody was like, what do I do with my hands? Do I only show? And it's funny because you're on camera, so everybody can sense that from a mile away. Like, I felt like it took too long for people to be like, if you want to come across as relatable on social media, you should probably be a little bit more authentic because people can see. And as somebody who has been working on this aspect of my life for so long, I can 100% back up what you said with regard to I need to see somebody who is presenting those traits, because if not, I know that they're not putting their best foot. They're only putting their best foot forward, and that's not relatable because we all go through hard times.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. Okay, so kind of piggybacking off of that, why do you think that vulnerability is often seen as a negative or undesirable trait in our society?
Yeah, this one took some pondering for me because in my, inner circle, vulnerability is cherished and celebrated. So when I, got out of that inner circle thinking and just thought about my experience previously with not being super comfortable with being vulnerable, I really think that people they're super uncomfortable. Like it just makes their skin crawl. Like, But it's not just that they feel uncomfortable being vulnerable. It's that other people's vulnerability makes them feel like, I don't like this. I want to get away from this. Stop that. And I think what it has to do with is that it's a lack of self-acceptance. So until you are in acceptance of your own flaws and just, you're not perfect all the time. Like one of my favorite authors says, like, we're all annoying. We really are. Just all annoying. And some of us are going to find others more annoying than others, but we're human. And so we're going to be annoying. But most of us grew up having to perform a certain way in order to be accepted and receive love. So that comes with us into adulthood. Some people are very, very lucky and they grew up in homes where their parents were like really tuned into what was going on and they were able to show them love and acceptance no matter how they behaved, or, because you don't have kids. I mean, kids are really annoying. So, that sometimes you don't hide that very well as a parent. But anyway, I think that in our culture specifically, we are a new and shiny object culture. So that doesn't leave a lot of room for, the dings and the dents and the failings and the imperfections and all of that. And it also, vulnerability requires slowing down, and we are as fast as you can go culture. But what happens, and this is where I have to, props to women, because we are leading the vulnerability, race here. We really are. We're leading the charge on it. We're not as afraid of it as men. It also does come more naturally to us in a lot of ways. And you can, in my perspective, the companies that have been male dominated have missed the vulnerability. And I think what we can see is that the women-owned businesses where vulnerability comes in is part of leadership. You're going to see those businesses succeed in a different kind of way. You're going to see employee happiness rise. And so I do think that it's starting to change, but I think that vulnerability makes people who aren't in a place of self-acceptance very uncomfortable, which is why I think it's seen as a negative.
It's funny that you mentioned that in terms of like, not only does it make your skin crawl, especially if you're not in the habit, but also other people's skin crawl. I was talking to a really good friend of mine recently about, I guess I hadn't ever thought to put the name on it, if you will. But he was talking about secondhand embarrassment. And it's like watching people like, it's funny because when I think of secondhand embarrassment, I think of watching somebody who's like really bad at singing karaoke. But I think other people think of it as like, oh my God, I would be so uncomfortable doing something like that. I don't know how they do it. And I think the only way that we break that is by doing it more and making it more commonplace. So that's interesting that you brought that up. I was actually watching a little YouTube short today. It was like a little comedic relief thing about kids. You say kids are annoying, especially when they're young, right? And if you guys have the time, you should definitely check this out because it made me laugh. It was an ad for, I guess it was an SNL skit of sorts, for Duolingo. And it was like Duolingo, how to talk to kids, because those people who don't have kids are so awkward and they're like
learning, oh my gosh, learning that new language. That's hilarious.
Yeah. And it was like, the girl was like practicing every day and she was like, oh yeah, okay, cool backpack. It was so funny.
I love it.
That is very funny.
If you want, I'll have to send props to Mitch, my husband, for sending that to me because it made me laugh this morning. And then also, Erin, to follow up, Michelle is semi-dubbed here on this show. She's dubbed the quote queen. And I think on the reverse side of that, I'm probably the book queen. So you're gonna have to share with us like who that author is.
Yes. His name is Stan Tatkin.
Okay.
And he writes a lot about our attachment systems in love and dating and friendships and marriage. So he's like a neuropsychologist, I think. And that's one of his quotes. We're all annoying.
So. I love it. And
I'm glad you brought the quote this week.
Yeah, I know. It's funny. I was thinking about it and I was like, I don't have a book to share this week. So Erin coming in hot, saving the day. I love it.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I'll just tell you that when my fiance and I were first dating, I asked him if he would read the book Wired for Love with me by Stan Tatkin and like read a chapter a week and then discuss it with each other. Big ask. I mean, we had just said that we were dating exclusively. And his response was, sure, what do I have to lose? So it was such a great way to start dating, I got to say.
Honestly,
I've ever done.
What a foundation to set to be able to like actually have those conversations about ideas that you want to see played out in your relationship, right? Like it's a really good way to like figure out what it is that you want, what it is that he wants, and then come to an agreement on how you're going to walk that out. That's awesome.
Yeah. And a lot of it was just understanding like how we respond to conflict and what in our past relationships has made us feel unloved or what the feedback we've been given of things that we do that the other partner, so I was just all out on the table.
That's great.
Lay out all the cards, guys.
Exactly. That's great to do that, especially like so early on in the relationship, just to set yourself up for success.
Yeah. I recommend it, and that was a moment of vulnerability, by the way, asking to
absolutely,
So.
Yeah. Okay, so Erin, can you share a personal experience with us where you found embracing vulnerability led to personal growth within yourself or a deeper connection with others?
Yeah, so I'm going to use Andrew again as my relationship with Andrew as an example. So just a little background. So I was divorced in 2008, and I met Andrew in 2021. So I dated that whole time. So I learned a lot about myself and others, and I really, with Andrew, was working on doing everything differently than I had done in the past, because I really wanted a different result. So we had been dating a couple of months, and I was having very strong feelings for Andrew. Like, I don't know if you've ever experienced before where like you just really want to say how you're feeling, but you're not totally sure that it's the right time. So like you keep on not saying it, and then you're like, oh, I gotta say it.
100%.
So that's what was happening for me. And I was like, what if I like, this just feels so risky to me, because I'd had a lot of rejection. Like, a rejection is a huge part of my story. So I was like, I'm basically putting myself out there to be rejected, which, back to my first, description of, or definition of vulnerability. But I was like actually at dinner with a friend of mine, and I was like, I just gotta tell him. And she's like, oh, I don't think you should. I think you should wait until he tells you. And I was like, I don't think so. It's killing me. I gotta just
my gosh,
see how I'm feeling. And so what I did was I had like written out all the reasons why I wanted to tell Andrew, and like, what is love to me. And I got myself really at a point where I was sure that like telling him was the end goal, not telling him so that he would tell me back. Mm-hmm. So I called him on after dinner with this friend. So this was sometime in July. So maybe we've been dating 8 to 10 weeks at this point. And maybe 10 to 12. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So I call in on my way home from dinner, and I'm like, hey, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm just hanging out at the house. I just finished up dinner, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, can I come by? There's just something I want to talk with you about. And he was like, yeah, sure. So I go over, and we're like sitting across from each other on the two different couches, like we're having a meeting. I'm like bullets under my dress, and then he's like, so okay, like, well, I'm like dying to know what you wanted to say.
You called this meeting, right?
Andrew, what I came here to tell you. So I was like, well, I just have been thinking, and I'm really enjoying our time together. And then I'm like, oh my God, this sounds like I'm going to break up with him. Like, you're a really great guy. And I was like, no, this is going somewhere really good. So I just was like, and I just want you to know, I love you. And then he was like, oh. and he didn't tell me back. He was like, oh my God, that is so nice. And I love everything that you just said. And he's like, and I'm not ready to say that to you yet. And I was like, okay. And he was like, it's not that I don't have strong feelings for you. It's that I just haven't been thinking about saying that. And so I want to really be sure I'm ready when I do say that to you. And Andrew, listen, he's the tortoise and I'm the hare. This is how we'll always be. He's like, oh. So it wasn't that surprising. But he was like, he said a lot of really wonderful things to me. And I felt fine. I left there. I felt fine. I went home. I was like, good for you. You said it. You're fine. Everything's great. The next morning, I wake up and I'm like, oh my God. Am I about to be rejected again? Am I just doing the same thing I've always done? And I'm the pursuer. I'm the one who's more in than the other person. And I'm going to end up, going crazy. So I was like, okay, what am I supposed to do now? So I was like, I think what I'm supposed to do now is tell him how I'm feeling. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to send him a text. And like, this is me doing things differently than I've done them before. So I sent him a text and I was like, hey, hope you're having a great morning, whatever. And I said, I'm feeling vulnerable after last night. I'm kind of having a freak out. I'm feeling really afraid that things are just going to go like they always have for me. And I'm not asking you to reassure me by telling me that you love me before you're ready to. I know you said some really nice things to me last night. I can't remember any of them. So if you could tell them to me again, I would really appreciate that.
Oh my gosh,
and I'm just like, oh my God, what's he gonna say? This is too much. I'm sure it's too much. This feels like too much. And he wrote me back and he was like, I wondered if maybe if you were feeling like this today. And he's like, you are the most beautiful woman inside and out that I have ever met. I can't even believe how lucky I am to get to be with you. And you're this and you're this. And I wake up thinking about you. I go to bed at night thinking about you. I'm so excited to see where this journey leads with us. And I was just like, now that is fantastic. So that was for me a pivotal moment because there was a lot at risk there. A lot of what we feel is at risk is stuff that we've carried with us from our past. It's old messages. It's, old beliefs that we have to now change about ourselves. And so for me to reach out and then ask for reassurance from him, first of all, it was a great test of what are we doing here? If he's unwilling to do that, if this is too much for him, then probably he's not the right guy for me. And it was and that was what was important for me going into a new relationship, was for me to be able to be 100% me, for me to say, I'm feeling this way and I need your help, and to not be rejected for it. So that was it. And it was definitely a pivotal moment for us. I felt really seen and accepted by Andrew. And the more I've been with Andrew, the more now it's just the way that I'm just 100% myself. I'm not figuring out, is this too much for Andrew, or does he need more of this, or is this unlovely about me? I'm just me. And so I do think that has carried over into my other relationships from having that experience with him, because now I know, I can expect this. This is my new standard, not just of myself, but of my relationships.
What a validating experience, right? For you to go in there and just kind of lay all your cards on the tables, and you have absolutely no idea how the other person, especially that early, right? You have no idea how he's going to react.
Yeah.
But it's funny because I've had experiences with vulnerability in dating, in my past as well. And what you just told me really reaffirms for me my personal belief that you really can't say the wrong thing to the right person.
Yeah.
And you can't say the right thing to the wrong person, because if Andrew wasn't the person that was going to continue to work with you and cultivate a life together and work towards those feelings, then that would have been off-putting to him, right? And I would argue that you should have said it anyway, right? Because people need to know, where you stand. So
no matter the outcome, that was the right thing for me to do.
Well, that's amazing and so validating and brave of you to take that leap. And I think that's a good example for, anybody who is in a similar situation where they're scared or nervous, or they don't know how they're going to be received, not just in their interpersonal relationships, but in their work relationships. You've got to tell people how you feel.
Yes.
And I think that's a really good segue or transition point. It's funny, when I met Erin, I had some really amazing conversations with her early on. And one of the things that I really admired about her, I think it was the second time we met, we were getting our nails done. So Erin and I go to this networking nail event. More on that later. It's awesome.
Yeah.
But we were getting our nails done, and she was wearing her workout gear, and I was very new in the group. And I was I didn't know who was in this group or anything. So I was always wearing my professional attire.
Yeah.
And I sat next to Erin, and she was like, look, when it comes to being in person, or when it comes to being on LinkedIn, like you've got to be who you are. Like you don't need to be a polished version of yourself because the people that want to work with you are going to be drawn to that. And she was like, I've got to get a workout in today. And I made that promise to myself. So I'm wearing my workout clothes. And I was like, this lady is my kind of woman. We're going to be friends.
Yeah, that's great. I forgot about
that. So kind of in that same vein, in your experience, how can vulnerability be seen as a strength and a catalyst for personal growth rather than a weakness in life and in business?
Yeah. Well, was another really good question. And I think that, I've kind of already alluded to this, but people who can be vulnerable are able to do so because they have a secure relationship with themselves. So that ability to be vulnerable, is just a mirror of somebody's safety that they feel, inside. And we really do have to start being vulnerable with ourselves before we can be vulnerable with others. And sometimes we are, our own harshest critic. We have these messages that have been recorded into our brains that then we are saying them to ourselves. And so oftentimes we do have to like re-record these messages. And that really comes down to self-love and acceptance. And so I think if somebody's about to come and ring my doorbell, so sorry.
That's okay.
But if you think about a leader who is already secure within themselves and they are creating an organization, when they lead with security and vulnerability and authenticity, they create an organization where it's okay to be wrong, which means that it's okay to try new things. That's a place where creativity can flourish because nobody's going to get in trouble for trying something that didn't work. So, and the other thing is that every business is built upon relationships. So there's not a single business that can run successfully without relationships. Sometimes those relationships are toxic. They just are. And sometimes those relationships are super healthy. But the person who's willing to embrace vulnerability, especially like what I have seen is that sometimes it's the employees who have to be brave enough to embrace vulnerability before the leader does. And maybe even the leader never does. But vulnerability is strength. And so it's going to build strong relationships. It's going to encourage creativity. You're going to be able to connect with your customer. Without vulnerability, you cannot connect with your customer. Unless your customer is a robot. You're not going to connect. So I think that this is pretty common amongst women-led or women-owned businesses where we are very interested in creating that connection with our customer. We're interested in knowing like what their pain points are, what are they worried about, what's keeping them up at night. All of that is about vulnerability. So it's really a strength to be able to, first of all, accept your own limitations and your imperfections, your flaws, your unlovableness, or what you think is unlovable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Perceived.
Right.
What you perceive as unlovable about yourself. So Jenny, you and I had a conversation about this, like when we were doing our videos. Like once you are only thinking about, once you're really clear about who you are and what your values are and how you want to self-express because it's truly you, you are no longer concerned with how others are perceiving you, which means that you can always just show up fully you because you're just present for the conversation. You're just present for any potential connection or any new relationship or as a support to whoever you come into contact with that may need to be supported. You're no longer sidetracked by how am I coming across? Do I look this way? Listen, I was trapped in that in my 20s. It's one of the reasons I end up having to get out of real estate, because real estate can be of like, think about all the signs with people's photos on them. Like that, ooh, it's just it's all about perception. Like, ooh, do people perceive me as successful? I need to wear this, I need to drive this, I need to live here. And that plagued me for a long time. So anyway, I feel that what I see as successful, I'll just tell you this quick story too, really. So when I was at Dell, I was there for 8 years, and Michael Dell is one of the most successful people in the world. And he's an authentic human being. He will get up at a town hall, in a room full of maybe 300 people, like just in a huge conference room where they've opened all of the dividers, and everyone's squeezed in there. And he gets up on stage and he'll take the mic, and anyone can stand up and ask him questions. And he is willing to say, I don't know yet. We're still watching that. I'm not sure. Or, yeah, that PC sucked. It was bad for Dell. It was bad for people. We let our consumers down. We have to. That, I was like, I'm into Dell because of Michael Dell. Like,
yeah,
this is a person that I can get behind. And so, and I think that's pretty rare for somebody at that level, and especially a man, to be like that.
Yeah. We didn't.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny that you mentioned that. We actually are in our last episode, we talked about work-life balance, and it was really timely. He was featured in an article talking about essentially taking breaks. That was his whole spiel in that article. And he was at a commencement telling people to take breaks.
Yeah.
And I was on Instagram in the comment section, and everybody was talking about, oh, that's easy for him to say. He's a slave driver, like he micromanages, etc. And he self-admitted that early in his career, he micromanaged.
I'm sure
and then he was like, you know what? I learned that wasn't the best way anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I made a pivot. And in my viewpoint is we should be celebrating the ability to recognize that we should be pivoting instead of doubling down. So that's interesting to have someone with firsthand experience that can kind of back that up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, imagine the immense amount of pressure when you have this big goal to achieve, and your actual name is on the line, and you've done everything, and now you're trying to, have other people, you're hiring so that you can scale. Of course. I mean, so many people are going to micromanage at first. So many people. It's so much harder not to. But yeah, but if somebody tells you you're micromanaging, maybe you should be like, oh, am I?
Right. Yeah.
Self-awareness? What is that?
Yeah.
That's amazing. All right. Well, kind of going on to that, Michelle, did you want to ask the next question?
Yeah. So a few more questions here for you, Erin, but how does vulnerability relate to resilience and bouncing back from difficult experience?
Yeah. So I think that's very close to what I was saying before, but I think also, so for example, someone who is already secure in themselves has a pretty good chance of being resilient. But vulnerability is also about grief and pain and acceptance. So a lot of times I think for some of us, I'm definitely this way. I'm a silver linings person. I just want to see the positive of everything.
Yeah.
But when I do that, I'm bypassing the part of me that needs to be heard and kind of like consoled a little bit, And so sometimes that looks like a lot of it is your own talking to yourself. So we all, if we're here, if somebody's listening, if we're talking here, we probably have high expectations of ourselves. We have like these goals. We've probably been a high achiever, and so we're like, oh, I have to always highly achieve. And then sometimes, we don't get that A+ or that A. And And so for me personally, I can very quickly say, well, an A- isn't so bad or whatever, you know, and then I'll be like, okay, where's the next one? Let me hurry up and go and try to get that next achievement. But what I've learned is that it's better for me to just take a moment and say, I kind of feel like shit about this.
Yeah.
You know, like that sucks for me. I don't like that. And what is it? Like, what's bothering me about that? Do I think it tarnishes my image, or did I let myself down, or did I let somebody else down? So first it's kind of that, you know, it's admitting to your own self, you know, whatever is going on. And then maybe it's going to somebody else and saying, this happened and I don't feel good about it. Or I think I let this person down. Or maybe it's going to the person that you think you let down and saying, hey, I think I let you down. So the reason why that ties into resiliency and being able to bounce back is because you're not skipping over anything. Because if you just keep on skipping over these things that have kind of made you feel, you know, like shit. Sorry if I'm not supposed to say that. But
you're fine.
But if you skip over them, they just keep building up. And so then they like sit here like this, you know, little evil monster that's like, you've messed up so much. Whereas if you just address it, you know, it falls off your shoulder. So then a falling down isn't a devastating experience. It's like, again, I've been here before. I don't like this feeling. But I think I'm normal. I think I'm not a superhero. And so, you know, whatever. And so that message builds up of, I'm human. It's okay. I don't have to get it right every time. I can mess up and I'm still lovable. I can mess up and I'm still really good at what I do. And that creates an incredibly resilient person.
Wow. That is some powerful stuff, you guys. I don't know if you guys were paying attention, but so many of the things that she just said are paramount, especially if you're constantly trying to build your self-image, which you should be. And you guys thought that you were going to get out of this podcast unscathed with a book reference from me, but it kind of spurred when you were talking. If you haven't read What to Say When You Talk to Yourself, it's a really, really powerful read that talks about your inner dialogue and how important it is for your outer dialogue. I've returned to that book many a times, and it's really important what's going on between your ears. So thank you for that reminder, Erin.
Yeah.
It's super
very
important.
Powerful stuff. Yeah.
All right, Erin, since you are literally the guru on all of this stuff, you're everyone's go-to gal now. What are some practical steps or exercises that other listeners can take to embrace vulnerability in their own lives that maybe have been effective for you?
Okay. My first one is very simple, and it is watch Ted Lasso.
Yes. I literally am watching the finale tonight. I'm so excited.
Me too.
That's funny. I watched the first 2 seasons. I have to watch the third. So
yes,
I know.
The third
I'll get on that.
But oh my gosh, it's super good. So yeah, I mean, this was the whole goal. You know, they just show men and women being vulnerable, but also it takes some self-awareness, but it also takes being with safe people who are willing to reflect back to you some things. And it's so good, but that's like vulnerability in action. My second tip is to think about the kids in your life. I know I called kids annoying, but I actually really love kids. And but like, imagine if a kid who's in your life, maybe it's a niece or a nephew or your best friend's kid, you know, a godchild or something, came to you to tell you that they messed up in some way. And how would you react to that child's admission that they messed up? Probably you would be so proud of them for coming to you and admitting something that they were so ashamed of. You'd want to hug them and tell them it's okay. Everybody messes up. And then think of your own self as a child and think about how you wish you would have been responded to when you messed up. And now you're just a grown-up version of that child. You're the same person. And that is how you need to respond to your own self when you think that you've messed up, or when you think that you're flawed or unlovable or whatever it is. Just start practicing that. And even maybe write the things down that you wish you had been told as a child, so that now you can start saying those things to yourself. And then my final tip is to say hard things in your closest relationships. So I think most of us, unless we were raised in really healthy households, were encouraged to sweep things under the rug.
Yeah.
And so it is extremely challenging to even know how to say when something's bothering you. But if you can get down to the most simplest way to say what it is that's bothering you, and not try to elicit a certain response from someone, or get them to don't even try to explain it so they understand how you're feeling. Something so simple, like even this is about, your own personal self, not even the relationship, but you could even say, I'm feeling like a failure at work. You can say something positive. A lot of times we also don't say the positive things because it feels vulnerable, because it feels like, oh, is this too much? Like when I'm with you, I feel really relaxed, and I love that. And so just start saying these things. You could even, and then a harder one would be, when you speak to me that way, it really hurts my feelings.
Yep.
The end of sentence, it's just like
full sentence, period.
Now, I don't recommend doing that with somebody who has a history of being irrational or berating or anything like that. But like with your safer people, just start saying what you think and what you feel. And then eventually it'll become second nature.
I mean, what an amazing reminder. Like literally we forget, because it's so remote in our brains, we forget who we were when we were children, but we thought we were invincible and that everything was possible. And we thought we were pretty cool. And obviously that goes away in the teenage years, and we start to get conditioned from society to not feel that way about ourselves. But it's so true. If you can tap into that and you can have like that childlike wonder and gentleness, it's so important. So thank you so much for that reminder. It's something I've actually seen that pop up quite a bit recently, and I've been trying really hard to channel that. So it's a daily practice, right? It's not something that you're going to get right every single time.
No.
Right.
It's really, even if, a couple of times a week it's on your mind and you're intentional about it, that's gonna help a ton. And I this is coming from me, and I mean, I was not good at saying what I really meant, and I was very afraid of being uncool and really, just not likable, really.
Yeah.
I was plagued by that for a long time.
And I think it's even more layered with women, right? Because we just have these, expectations that, are laid out by our conditioning or society or you name it. And so it's so important to have these conversations so that A, we can realize that we're not alone. And B, we can realize hey, how can we implement tactical tips and tricks to put ourselves in a better position so that when we are in those safe relationships or those safe conversations, we can truly show up for that other person in a way that does them justice and the relationship justice.
Yeah.
So really, really powerful reminder. Erin, thank you so much for this. This has been something that I'm going to return to often.
Thank you. This was a really fun conversation. You made me really think through these things. So that was great.
Absolutely. And just for everybody that is plugging in, where can they connect with you and follow along on your journey?
Yeah. So probably the easiest way is on Instagram. I actually just changed my handle today because since I'm getting married, I'm changing my name. My current last name, I mean, look at that. It's terrible. So it's my new handle is Erin Loves Homes _TX on Instagram. And then you can also you can check out my website. There's a lot more information on there at domovera.com.
And we will link Erin's information for you guys on the post that we put on LinkedIn so that you guys can follow along. I follow Erin already on Instagram, and she has the best content, honestly. She's so funny. She's so authentic, and she's always sharing really beautiful homes if you're in the Texas area. So definitely a great follow. And personally, from the bottom of my heart, Erin, thank you so much for joining us. We truly appreciate you. And this was an amazing conversation.
Thank you. It was super fun.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, we'll see you guys next week.
We'll see you all next week. Have a good week.
Have a good week, everyone. Go kill it.